In the misty hills of a small Scottish village, nestled in the heart of the Highlands, there once lurked a darkness that would haunt the community for generations. The village of Cragmoor, with its stone cottages and winding paths, was quiet, almost forgotten by the outside world. But it was here, amidst the mist and silence, that something sinister took root. It began with whispers, people disappearing into the night without a trace. At first, the villagers thought it was the harsh wilderness claiming victims, as it had many times before. Cragmoor had always been isolated, surrounded by deep forests and treacherous moors. But as more and more villagers vanished, fear spread like wildfire. The disappearances grew more violent. Bodies began to be found, mutilated beyond recognition, with eerie symbols carved into their skin. The local constable, a man of the old ways, insisted that it was the work of an ancient curse, a spirit from the village's dark past. But others feared it was something far worse, something human. They were right. A series of grisly killings plagued Cragmoor for months. Each time, the killer left no trace of his identity, only the same grotesque symbols carved into the bodies. The village was paralyzed with fear. No one ventured out after dark. Doors were bolted, windows barred, but nothing seemed to stop the terror. One stormy night, a young woman named Isla, the daughter of a local farmer, was alone in her family's cottage. Her parents had gone to a neighboring village for supplies, leaving her to tend the animals. The rain fell in torrents and the wind howled through the cracks in the stone walls. Isla stoked the fire, trying to shake the feeling of dread that had settled over her. As the night wore on, a faint knock echoed from the front door. She froze, her heart racing. No one in Cragmoor would be out in such weather. Slowly she approached the door, her hand trembling as she reached for the latch. The knock came again, more insistent this time. "Who's there?" she called, but there was no answer. Fighting the rising panic, Isla peered through the small window beside the door. At first she saw nothing, just the swirling mist and rain. But then, in the shadows of the trees, she caught a glimpse of something. Someone. A tall figure stood motionless at the edge of the forest, watching her cottage. His eyes glinted in the darkness, and in his hand he held a long, gleaming knife. The killer had come for her. She slammed the window shut and ran to the back of the cottage. There was no way out. The only door led to where the figure stood. She could hear the faint sound of footsteps outside now, moving slowly, deliberately. Her mind raced as she searched for something, anything, to defend herself. Her father's old hunting rifle hung above the fireplace, but the ammunition was stored in the barn, too far to reach. Suddenly the door creaked as if the intruder was testing the lock. Isla grabbed a fireplace poker, holding it tight, her knuckles white. The killer was inside now. She could hear his slow, heavy breathing behind her. When she turned, she saw nothing at first, only the flickering shadows cast by the fire. Then, from the corner of the room, a figure emerged, a gaunt, pale man with sunken eyes and a face devoid of emotion. His knife glistened in the firelight, the same symbols carved into the blade as those on the bodies. Before Isla could scream, he lunged. The next morning, her parents returned to find the cottage in disarray. The fire had burned out, and Isla was nowhere to be found. Her bloodied poker lay on the floor beside a series of strange markings. Outside, the rain had washed away all traces of footprints, as though no one had ever been there. Isla's body was never found, and the killings in Cragmoor stopped as suddenly as they had begun. The village, forever scarred, slowly returned to its quiet existence, but the memory of the killer lingered. To this day, the villagers speak of a figure who still wanders the misty hills, watching from the shadows. And every now and then, on stormy nights like that long ago evening, someone will hear a faint knock at the door, and they will wonder if the terror of Cragmoor has returned.